Welcome to This Explainer. I am so excited to jump into this with you today because we're tackling something that is, well, it's profoundly human. It's incredibly relatable and honestly a bit of a wake-up call. We're going to explore exactly why we subconsciously sabotage our own happiness. We'll be diving straight into Ryuho Okawa's brilliant analysis from his book, Guideposts to Happiness. Specifically, we're zooming in on Chapter 3, which unpacks a concept that might, literally, change how you view your own internal dialogue forever. Let's get right into it.
So why do we end up hurting ourselves? It's a heavy question, right? You might even feel a little pang of recognition just hearing it. I mean, how many times have you caught yourself endlessly replaying a past mistake or maybe freezing up entirely because you're just absolutely terrified of failing in the future? This habit of being our own worst enemy, it's painful, but it's an almost universal human condition. We all want to be happy for sure, but our minds have this weird way of building invisible cages that keep us miserable. To understand why we do this, we really need to look at the specific term the author uses.
Okay, let's dive into this core concept. The text defines this as the self-punishing spirit. It's a very specific psychological and spiritual mindset that actually actively gets in the way of your happiness. We're not just talking about feeling a little blue for a day. No, this is an ingrained habit where a person subconsciously abuses, blames, and sabotages themselves. It's like this internal broken record constantly whispering that you somehow deserve to suffer. But, where on earth does a destructive mechanism like that even come from? Well, the author actually breaks down the root causes of this self-sabotage into two distinct categories. On one hand, we have origins that stem from early childhood environments. These feel almost innate, right? Because they start so incredibly young. On the other hand, we have acquired origins. These develop much later in life, usually from a heavy accumulation of adult setbacks and just ongoing life struggles. Ultimately, both paths lead to the exact same destination, but the journeys getting there look pretty different. Let's look at the childhood ones first. You see, this self-punishing spirit often sprouts up incredibly early. The author notes that early traumatic experiences, like, say, being bullied in school or even kindergarten, they can embed this really deep subconscious tendency in a child to just expect harm from others. It's a tragic reality. Victims of early bullying often internalize that pain completely, and unfortunately, they carry this dark expectation right into adulthood, basically assuming that being hurt or harmed is just their default role in life. But wait, what about the people who develop this mindset later on? As adults, we go out into the world and inevitably things don't work out. We fail. It happens. But when those painful failures start to pile up, a completely new psychology takes hold. We begin to fear the sheer shock of future disappointment. So what does our mind do to protect us? We start preemptively punishing ourselves just to artificially lower our own expectations. And this brilliantly illustrates the author's incredible insight that adult self-punishment is, at its core, a misguided psychological defense mechanism. Think about it like this. Imagine bracing yourself for a fall on a gym mat by tensing your entire body and telling yourself, okay, this is going to hurt. You're anticipating the blow to soften the shock. That is exactly what adult self-punishment is doing. The author uses this fantastic metaphor. It's like wearing armor that accidentally spikes inward. By constantly predicting your own failure and blaming yourself in advance, yeah, you might lessen the dramatic shock of an actual fall, but you end up causing yourself constant, agonizing internal pain every single day. Part 1, the paradox of perfection, why great souls suffer the most. Now, it isn't just people who feel defeated who suffer from this. Surprisingly, this spirit often heavily afflicts those with immense hidden capability. The author writes that individuals with really high ideals, he actually compares them to giants who have sealed away their own enormous power. They often suffer terribly. Why is that? Well, there's a massive gap between their noble ideals and the harsh, often unfair reality of society. When the world treats them poorly, instead of fighting back, they turn all that frustration inward. They suppress their own greatness just to try and fit into a flawed world. And that friction creates some deep, profound spiritual suffering. And this leads to a very specific set of behaviors. Highly sensitive, empathetic, great souls frequently make the mistake of carrying intense, completely unwarranted guilt. When things go wrong around them, they actually believe they have to take on the sins of everyone else. The text beautifully but tragically compares this to an old horse or a camel taking on this massive, heavy load. They end up confusing unnecessary self-punishment with some kind of noble spiritual burden, completely trapping themselves in this endless cycle of stoic, self-imposed misery. Let's move to and see how this builds into part 2, a prescription for the soul. breaking the cycle of self-sabotage. All right, so how do we actually break this cycle? The absolute first step is you have to step back. You need to objectively analyze your own psychological habits. This means looking at your childhood experiences, looking at your past failures, but doing it without letting your inner critic grab the microphone. You must recognize your mind's deeply ingrained tendency to self-punish as exactly what it is. It's a habit. It's a tendency. It's not some unchangeable truth about who you are. And once you can observe that habit objectively, you can finally start to change how you react to hardship. Which brings us to a really crucial shift in perspective. You have to move away from viewing failure as a reason to beat yourself up. Instead, try viewing it as vital nourishment for soul training. The author uses this wonderful image of waves. When a wave of failure comes, you can either let it repeatedly batter you and sink you, or, and this is key, you can choose to skillfully ride on top of it, extract the good from the experience, and actually use it as training to elevate your soul. So the crucial point is that navigating those waves requires a profound internal shift. You need to actively cultivate a calm, rich heart. You must dedicate yourself to forgiving others who have wronged you, maybe even the people who started you on this path way back in childhood. But most crucially of all, you have to abandon that extreme stoicism and genuinely allow yourself to be forgiven. You have to forgive yourself for your past and forgive yourself for your perceived flaws. And all of this builds toward one incredibly foundational realization. The author grounds this entire process of forgiveness in one ultimate spiritual truth. You are a child of God. Recognizing this inherent divine worth, that is the ultimate key to ending the cycle of self-abuse once and for all. You are not meant to live in a state of constant self-flagellation. When you truly realize that you carry a spark of the divine, the necessity for all that inward spiking armor, it simply melts away. Consequently, the text strongly urges us to stop equating worldly success or happiness with sin. Look, God does not desire your unhappiness. Punishing yourself simply because the reality of the world doesn't perfectly match up with your high ideals, it's fundamentally misguided. It goes entirely against your true nature as a child of God. You have to make the conscious decision to stop inviting this unfair self-punishment into your life. It's time to just drop the heavy burden you were never, ever meant to carry in the first place. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The theories and insights we've gone through today are incredibly powerful, but, they only matter if you actually apply them. So I'm going to leave you with this. The very next time you face a failure or a painful setback, what will you do? Will you automatically put on that familiar painful armor of self-punishment? Or will you choose to recognize your worth, ride the wave, and truly forgive yourself? The choice is absolutely yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helps you build a kinder, far more joyful relationship with yourself.